going on, Wolfpack Nation? Welcome to another episode of Tuffy Talk here. We are so excited to be breaking down the offense now. Last week we were breaking down the defense with Kitten Gibbs from Lockdown Wolfpack, but now we got myself, Kenny Kinsey, here with Phillip Danford from Inside Pack Sports, who will be helping us today, kind of breaking down the offense. He does a lot of stuff, really focusing on football and play analysis, things like that. So again, it should be a great episode here. First of all, Phillip, thank you so much for joining us here today.
Thanks, guys. I appreciate the opportunity to come and the platform you guys have put together. It's really been impressive the last couple of years. And so, I'm always up for talking state football, and, it's a great place to do it. I'm geeked. The season is almost here. I can't tell you.
Yeah, well, exactly. And again, I think this is the perfect time to do it. Again, we're only a couple weeks away from the first game. And I tell you again, I joined as a football equipment manager when Doran first came on, and it still baffles me, honestly, thinking back to 2013 and thinking back to how much criticism that Doran guy and how, is he really the guy, and how, this guy was a coach for 2 years in Northern Illinois. He shouldn't be a head coach at a Power 5 like NC State. And then here we are heading into, it's, again, I think for every NC State fan, it's almost like it can't be this good to be like, the saying is too good to be true. It's like, it can't be this good, right? Like, it just can't be. So it's hard to wrap my mind around even to this day. But anyway, so really jumping into it. So again, really kind of the idea here is that we'll just like with defense, kind of break it down position by position, talk about obviously the main guys, but, even talk about some of the backup players that we'll probably see on the field at some point. And then also too, talking who are some breakout candidates, things like that. But again, just have fun with it, see how much we can get through here. So to kind of start it off here, Phillip, obviously we'll kind of start off with the most easiest person to talk about when it comes to offensive side. And that obviously is Bryson Spees. No, I'm just kidding. It's Devin Leary, of course, the man, the myth, the legend. Devin Leary delivers. And again, not to say that Spees, you're not somebody to talk about, but obviously,
don't do Bryson like that.
No, of course not. But whenever anybody talks in state offense right now, across the country, it's Devin Leary's name that comes up. He's the guy again that, one of the first guy in program history actually to hit that 35-5 mark, last season. And again, he's back again this season. And again, I know, Phillip, again, you've done a ton of breakdowns with him for sure. But, one of the things which I even have to remind people as well, when they talk about 35-5, is 2 or 3 of those interceptions were halftime Hail Marys. Like I remember Florida State, into the first half, Florida State was an interception. So, he truly only actually threw 2 or 3 real interceptions last year. So, it's how impressive was it, honestly? And what do you kind of see as his potential really heading into the season, kind of building off of last season?
So I guess the reality is, for Leary, sky's the limit, right? We've seen what he can do physically. He put up a crazy touchdown to interception ratio last year. Is that something that can necessarily be duplicated? I don't know. It's going to be fascinating to see.
Yeah.
But I guess what caught my attention, right, was his interview today, I forget when it was, but talking about a better understanding of everybody's assignment. And that's a big part of playing quarterback, understanding all the little key aspects. It's not just I'm looking at the shell of the safeties, but I'm looking at the leverage of the nickel. I'm looking at the fronts. I'm understanding my pass protections and how I can change those, right? Do I need to move the tight end over? There's all kinds of little intricacies that really, I think up top is where he'll be a better quarterback. The guy physically has shown us he has the potential to be a next level quarterback. And, my favorite throw of the year, right? So I always like looking at far hash throws. Why do I like that? Because I don't think most college quarterbacks can make them, to be honest with you. Do they have the arm? Can they do it in timing? All that, right? And what stands out to me, my favorite throws was the South Florida game, first game of the year. So that was a while back. So you got to really think on this one. So Devin Carter's on the far right. We're on the left hash, 9 route, deep. You have South Florida playing a cover 3. And so what's that corner doing? You've got actually it's a 4 verts, I believe. So he is midpointing 2 receivers running vertically. But what is he going to do? He's shading the inside one closer to Leary because he's probably saying college quarterbacks aren't going to make this throw. Right, because when Leary hits Devin Carter, it is 45 yards down the right sideline, the opposite from where he's at. That was a crazy impressive throw. And that cornerback, in my mind, I'm like, he's saying this guy can't do it, so I'm going to shade the other guy. And he left Carter open, huge play. I mean, you just don't see that every day from college quarterbacks. And again, I can't think of a quarterback. Now, we've had some guys with strong arms, right? Harrison Beck had a strong arm. He just wasn't all there. But
Yeah.
Leary seems to be the full package here going into this year.
Yeah. Well, and because obviously, one of the biggest things I know you've covered, or you say you've been part of IPS for 5, 6 years or so, something like that. So, basically a lot of Dorn's tenure so far, especially more of obviously the better years. I mean, obviously, if you weren't here for 2013, that's okay. Wasn't much talk about that year. But really starting with Jacoby, obviously they're heading into Ryan Finley and then now Leary. It's crazy to think about really, kind of comparing in your head in terms of how good can Leary really be in terms of through the history of NC State quarterbacks. And because I think we've all agreed on here, I mean, if he gets us an ACC championship, you're finding a spot for him in the top 5 in terms of quarterbacks of NC State history. But I mean, even still, I mean, this guy again, his basically second full year through 35-5 stat line, he still has another year to go, and it's just kind of crazy to think about how again that Dorn has done a great job really over his years bringing in some great talent, because obviously it all starts really from the quarterback. And so I mean for pretty much every single year since 2014 except for really 2019 was basically a debacle between McKay, Leary, and Bailey Hockman, that he's had a guy that has been one of the top quarterbacks in the country. I mean, Ryan Finley was highly touted and, at one point was talked about being the number 1 quarterback off the board. Jacoby Brissett was one of the top 2 or 3 right there beside Dak Prescott. And then here we are with Devin Leary. And I mean, I think one of the biggest things I think about is last year with the pro day and how, everybody was looking at all the prospects, but everybody was like, man, like that Devin Leary, like, is he draft eligible this year? Cause man, I like him. So, yeah, I mean, it's kind of unbelievable, but what would you kind of say? I mean, because obviously this year you're heading into it, obviously losing a Mezzi, you're losing Icky on the left side. So I mean, how realistic would you say that it is that Leary can repeat what he did last year? Because I think that's really where everybody's head is at. Is like, it was so unbelievable, and obviously losing to Mecca is going to hurt. But again, we'll kind of start talking about the wide receivers here, but I just don't really see there's really going to be a huge drop off. I know him and Emeka had a great, chemistry together, but I see a lot of that with Carter though. And that him and Thayer have a great relationship, and Porter Rooks is getting up there. Chris Tootle, I think, is very underrated. Like, what are your kind of thoughts in terms of heading into this season, what he can do statistically?
Let me ask you guys. Let me pose a little question to you. 35-5 touchdown interception ratio last year. If he goes 35-10 this year,
Mm-hmm.
is he better? Is he worse? I mean, because from my point of view, maybe you disagree. I don't necessarily think it's the worst thing in the world, and to an extent, I'm okay with more interceptions this year, because one of the things I think that this offense might need to advance, I think there are times where we might need to get a little more aggressive downfield,
Mm-hmm.
and so put it in tighter windows. Yeah, I mean, there could be the effect of more interceptions, but one of the things that catches my eye, right? I do a lot of stats and I watch a lot of film. Is State did regress a little bit on third down this past year from the
Mm-hmm.
prior year.
Mm-hmm.
Now, one of the things that when I was looking at the stats here in the offseason, I noticed that on third down, balls that were thrown by Leary past the sticks, right? So the sticks are the yard to gain.
Mm-hmm.
It was 20% higher in terms of the passes that didn't get to the sticks. So that means they required run after catch to convert the first down.
Mm-hmm.
20% higher this year than the prior year. So the prior year, we could say he's more aggressive or he got better looks coverage-wise. Maybe that's the answer. So I'm thinking to myself right now, right, one of my big questions is how does State get better on third down? And I'm saying, all right, there might be a chance where Leary might have checked it down last season because he had a higher completion rate on third down, but does he really need to try to stick it in there a little bit more this year? I'm not saying you get reckless, right?
Yeah.
But I'm saying there might be a time where we take a few more chances. I mean, what's your thoughts on that?
Kenzie, any thoughts on that?
Well, talking about how you don't mind the interceptions going higher, I agree with that because like Emeka, that's a special wide receiver. Like, some of the catches he made should have 100% been intercepted. Like the Carolina game, that final play, like there are a lot of throws that he caught that were 100% could have been interception. So losing Emeka is gonna, I feel like, make the interception number go up some. But then again, I feel like Devin Carter and Devin Leary's connection is just as good as Emeka's. So I don't see, like you said, it being bad if it goes up. I think that it'll just be showing like who we lost, and I think that it would be good if it went up because it would make us more aggressive as an offense instead of just running the ball.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. No, I mean, for me, really, I think that, it's, I'm okay with it as well, but I mean, obviously understanding that I don't necessarily know if it's going to be because of the wide receiver. Because again, I really do think that Devin Carter came back because he felt that he could take the next step. Because I think you saw a lot of potential with him last year. Obviously, that catch he made against Clemson to beat Clemson, I mean, that was an unbelievable catch, and it was an effort catch. He just willed it to get his body over to make that catch. And I think that he has potential. Obviously, being an outside wide receiver, that he could step into that Emeka role and get a lot more targets, and really try and help his draft stock. But also, too, I think that you have a consistent wide receiver you could throw to, and he's going to make a play for you every single time. And Thayer Thomas, you got a great young wide receiver in Porter Rooks that has shown great, potential. But also, too, I think that even Jordan Houston, and again, we'll talk a little bit more about him later, but I think that he's kind of like he's a very shifty. He's a great check down running back. He's not a ground and pound kind of running back, but he's a guy kind of like not saying he is Christian McCaffrey, but he's kind of like a Christian McCaffrey, where he's just very shifty. He's got some quickness behind him. He's got some speed behind him, and that's what he relies on. So, but also too, I think that Tim Beck does a great job of setting up Devin Leary for success. I think we've seen that last year. He's at the end of the day, with all the criticism that Tim Beck gets, because we've said that offensive and defensive coordinators they're easy scapegoats. He's still done a great job of making great plays when he needs to. I mean, besides the Mississippi State Ricky Person jump pass, I think we all can agree that wasn't necessarily the best call. But other than that, though, I mean, he's done a phenomenal job again of setting up Leary for success. And again, just like you said, Leary's going to know everything inside and out. So I wouldn't be surprised though if he repeated, plus or minus a little bit. I would not be surprised at all. That's kind of where my head's at with it.
So speaking of Emeka, a couple thoughts about him and his replacement this year, which I think could be tougher than I think some have given it credit for. Emeka was 21% of all the receiving targets last year. That's a pretty big cut right there.
Yeah.
The other thing is he ran a pretty full route tree. He didn't run a ton of over routes, but you saw him. Whether obviously you have the verticals on the outside, the comebacks, the back shoulders. So how do we replace that? And I want to say, opening practice was yesterday. I'm pretty sure they had slid Devin Carter over to. That's what I would call the X in this offense. That because typically that's going to be your isolated receiver and 3-by-1 stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I guess talking about the route tree, where my question's coming, I'm not saying Devin can't do it. I just haven't seen him do it a lot. Is two routes in particular. The first one is the back shoulder throw, and the reason I say that is because last year the back shoulder throw went strictly to Emeka Emezi on the left side.
Yep.
Like he just did not throw the back shoulder.
Mm-hmm.
Now, can Devin do it? I bet he can, but we just haven't seen it, right? And the back shoulder throw has been huge. Whether you're talking Pitt in 2020. Clemson last year, we had that insane catch up where he pinned it against the helmet. Yep. Wake Forest, crazy 2-point conversion on a back shoulder.
Yep.
I mean, it's been, especially in the red zone, a big play. And then the other route type is, frankly, we have not seen those quick perimeter screens where they throw it to Devin. He's typically more the blocker out there, but they did throw him to Emeka. So, are they going to change that X position if we say Devin's the guy out there to fit? Do they think he fits that skill set or not? I wonder how things will potentially be altered. So
yeah, no. Well, and again, because I mean, obviously with Devin, I think that. Well, first of all, one thing I will say is I think that the back shoulder throw should be patented and trademarked by Emeka and Devin, and nobody in the history of college or football should ever be allowed to throw a back shoulder throw again, because it's never going to be as good as Emeka and Devin did it. That's for sure over the last 2 years, exactly. But Yeah, I mean, I think that, again, with Devin, he's got the size, he's got the strength, he's got the skill. Like, kind of like what I was saying in terms of, being able to get your body around and make that pass. I think a lot of it too is just really like a lot of it's chemistry. I mean, a lot of it's just a mecca
Mhm.
and like knowing like Devin likes to throw it to my back shoulder. So if I see it come that way, I'm going to be ready for it. And so I think that that's why this camp and spring camp, are very important. And obviously the off season, I'm sure they're talking about it too. So, cause I mean, I think that even though Thayer is, I mean, he's played for NC State for years now and, more than Devin has, I think that it's still setting up that you're looking at Devin to be the number one wide receiver just because of the fact that the skill set is there, the big playability is there. But also too, I mean, just because again, you're looking at him to basically replace Emeka, who was obviously the clear number one last year. But again, I think we'll kind of talk about this too. But I still wouldn't look over like guys like Anthony Smith, Keon Lassane, Julian Gray. I mean, Trent Penix. Whether you call him running back, tight end, wide
Tight end,
receiver,
whatever. Yeah.
kicker, punter. I don't
Anything.
know. But but I mean, because you got options. Like I think that there's a lot of great options. I think that Anthony Smith will take a next step, and I think even Keon Lassane, he was really impressive to me in the spring game. And I think he's turned a lot of heads to coaches too. So can you kind of talk a little bit about that too? Kind of talk a little bit in terms of what you see depth wise for the wide receivers this year.
I mean, it'll be very interesting, especially if Keon Lassane kind of takes over that Z, what I would call that receiver out to the
Mhm.
right. Internally, they might have different lettering, but that's how when I chart. If he goes there, then we're really getting a smaller, more quick twitch body type across really the whole wide receiver core. Not saying Daryl Jones might step up. I know he's a bigger kid, the transfer
Yep.
out of Maryland.
Mhm.
Anthony Smith is height wise bigger, not necessarily thick, right? He's not muscular like Devin Carter or anything, but he offers quite a unique skill set. And when we talk about building out more explosive plays, I mean, yes, Anthony Smith is going to be a huge piece of that, because I would like to see, right? I'll tell you, as I watch this stuff, I've always got these things like I'm like, I really wish they would run this. I am dying to see Anthony Smith run just like those deep over routes that you see like Alabama run all the time with like Devontae Smith and Jalen Waddle,
Mhm.
and especially against you get these three high defenses.
Yeah.
Man, that's a killer route, and it's just something we don't do a lot in this offense. But
True.
I've got my eye on Anthony Smith, and I'm like, that right there, like that is exactly what I would like to
Yep.
see. Pair that over route with a deep post from Carter, something like that. Really kind of stress that post safety.
Yep.
The other thing is just talking receiving core as a whole. I want to go back. I think we talked about it a little bit before we started recording. Dave Dorn made a comment in I want to say it was ACC Media Day when somebody asked him, "What is the NC State offense? Like, what do they
Yep.
do?" And his comment was, "They take what the defense gives you." Right now, I think you can talk 2 hours on just this topic alone, but what do we think the defense will do against NC State this year? And if you are an opposing defensive coordinator, especially early in the season, right? So you're ECU's defensive coordinator. I think his name is Blake Harrell. Well, I'm saying, it's a run game that was a little bit questionable last year. We don't know quite what they have. Lost Kwanu, new running backs. We know they've got a heck of a signal caller. I'm probably going to play more two high defense, right? I'm going to have two safeties back. We're really going to defend the pass. We're going to play top down.
Mhm.
So one of the things that really does is that isolates those linebackers and the nickel. So, like, for example, Florida State plays two high defense. Who had a great game against Florida State? Tight ends, running backs, all those guys, because they got isolated against those underneath receivers because now you got two high safety, right? You got that deep shell, and now you're one-on-one underneath. And we saw, the slide routes, and we saw running backs getting isolated one-on-one with the backer out of the backfield. And I think that's going to be a huge part, especially to start the year. If we assume we're going to see a lot of two high coverage, I would look for big opening games from guys, Penix, Tootle, Houston, right? Sumo. I mean, to me, I'm looking at that group right there, and I'm saying, all right, they're gonna play us deep. We're gonna take advantage of what's underneath. If we're saying what Dorn's
Yeah.
comment, we take what the defense gives us. I think that's what.
Well, and we'll definitely save talking about sumo for part 2, is because I mean it sounds like that's got to be a topic within itself for sure. Talking about sumo. Before we continue, I want to take a quick second to tell you about our sponsor, Flatlands Jessup Insurance Group, that has your whole world covered, with agents in 5 offices throughout eastern North Carolina to help you decide how much coverage you need. Offering policies for home and auto, recreational vehicles, commercial, crop, health, life, and employee benefits. They are able to combine options to find a comprehensive solution that works for you. Flatlands Jessup protects the things you love so you can spend less time worrying and more time enjoying them. Find them on Facebook and Instagram at Flatlands Jessup. You can also visit their webpage at www.flatlandsjessup.com. So please make sure to go and check them out. But kind of wrapping up, like I want to kind of wrap up the quarterbacks here, and then that way we can kind of move on from them. But one question which I did want to ask about Leary before we move on from him specifically is, so who does Leary remind you of? Like whether it's somebody you've seen in college or somebody even in the NFL, like who would you say is Devin Leary's comparison type?
Good question. I haven't not thought of this one. Let's see.
Blatant hype about that question.
Something like that.
Do you have somebody? Let me think for a second. Do you have somebody who reminds you of?
I know that
I'm trying to go through NFL prototypes.
Yeah, well, I know that my partner Macon, we've done some live streams with him, and he loves bringing up the comparison of Drew Brees of a sort. Again, a very consistent passer, a very accurate passer. Not necessarily somebody that blows you away with speed or running ability or height or size, but he's a guy that he will throw. He throws the ball incredibly well, and he's very smart. So that's kind of when I think about who would I say, I just think about, because my partner Macon's brought it up multiple times that he definitely sees a lot of Drew Brees and Leary.
No, I think it's a great answer. He's definitely crossed my mind. Let me give you one that's probably way out of the box. I'm not talking a little out of the box. I'm talking probably way out of the box. You just kind of describing Leary in my head. One of the guys I actually really like as a quarterback, especially I used to watch more of the Panthers than I necessarily do now, but Jake Delonge kind of stands out to me, and I know that's what I'm saying, like way out of the box. Very solid quarterback. I thought he knew what he was doing. He put the ball in the right place. He didn't get, he was not a turnover-happy quarterback, and he simply led a good quality offense. I don't know, man. For some reason, that's the name that pops in my head. I know there's probably better comparisons. But, that's what Leary is.
Yeah.
I mean, he's a very steady signal caller. He's going to give you some wild plays, but for the most part, he's not going to get you in trouble, right? And that's a really big key. We see some of these quarterbacks that have huge arms and all that. Right now, I'm thinking of the kid down in Florida. I can't think of his name. He is the prototype of a quarterback. I mean, he's massive. He's huge. He could run. But he also is inaccurate, and he throws the ball into terrible spots constantly. And it's kind of like, well, that's not Devin Leary. That's not the consistency that we see from, the state signal caller.
Absolutely. So, and then kind of wrapping up again, so talking a little bit in terms of behind him. So, obviously talking about Jack Chambers, who, is coming in, obviously, we actually interviewed him, and, we asked him straight up, like, are you here like to compete against Leary, or are you just here to, be a part of, the team and help out? And, like, kind of what's your goal? And, he basically said, he's a competitor. He's here to compete, and do the best he can. So, but he obviously understands, obviously, to say, the likelihood of him beating out Devin is, not so great, but, at the end of the day, he wants to be a part of a championship team, and he wants to do his part to get us there. And obviously, he's an athlete for sure. Just, look at his stats, look at his tape from Charleston Southern. But, obviously looking at like Ben Finley, he's a guy that, during spring game stuff, he's a tough kid, and he's gone through some adversity, obviously stepping in the UNC game in 2019, and not playing half bad, making some freshman mistakes, but not playing half bad. Like, what's your kind of take in terms of the people behind Leary?
Well, I really like Chambers. I did a little breakdown on Chambers not too long after it was announced he was coming to state. Went back and watched, the film against Georgia, which I mean, what a nightmare defense to play against. For him to hold his own, I was impressed, and I actually enjoyed. I asked him about that the other day, and kind of enjoyed his answers. What I think of Chambers is, he comes from an offense in Charleston Southern that threw the ball more than State threw the ball last year, which is hard to believe. State threw the ball quite a bit. They threw the ball all the time at Charleston Southern, right? Threw a ton of verticals. He is not the biggest guy in stature, but he has a big arm, right? I saw him throw a lot of those deep nines. And so, I think he fits what Beck would need if he had to step in, but he gives you that little extra bit in terms of he can run with his legs, right? Now, you're not going to confuse him for a Michael Vick, but he is a guy that gets the yards that need to be captured, right? He doesn't go down easy in the backfield. He'll turn what would be a 6-yard sack, and he'll get back to the line of scrimmage, keep you alive for the next play. He's just a very good, solid quarterback, and I know he's here, a little change of scenery, moving up a little bit, and I believe, he's enjoying himself, but I think it's a great option, a great late pickup in the transfer portal for NC State. Now, Finley, I was a little harsh, a little critical coming out of spring game, to be honest with you. I thought there were some throws there that he should have made that he didn't throw. He wasn't pulling the trigger on them. And, he was holding the ball and then he was having to scramble out, and that sets up big hits. And, it's a guy, to me, he's got to trust what he sees better if he's going to get on the field. I mean, frankly, it seems to me that, as a quarterback, you look at pre-snap, what's there? What is my shell? Like, what are the leverages? Like, you're trying to piece together, what do I think is going to happen? But post-snap, you've got to confirm everything. And that's where I feel like things might get lost in translation. He's not confirming what the coverage is or what's happening or who's blitzing. Like, where am I hot off of? Am I hot off the right or the left, or if this guy comes? And I just feel like the post-snap kind of, putting it all together wasn't there for me in the spring game. To be honest, I mean, I have Chambers as the 2, and then I have Finley. That's how I see it in my evaluations.
Well, and kind of like wrapping this up here is, again, we'll talk about running backs, tight ends, and offensive line for part 2. But looking at like kind of specifically like the UConn game, obviously the week before Clemson, and obviously UConn's not a great football team. So, hopefully, or we can get up on them pretty early and then more likely probably pull the guys out so there's no, crazy injuries or anything like that. Give the guys rest, obviously, for the next game. Do you think that that'll be a time where Doran will maybe see what Chambers can do? In terms of like getting him, on the field, getting him some plays, getting used to the offense. In case, knock on wood, I'm knocking on every single piece of wood, and I will continue to knock on wood.
Everybody knock on
something. But I'm not saying the word. I'm just said I'm knocking, but I did not say the word.
Oh my God.
But if we do, so that way, like to kind of prepare Jack, at all, or do you think that might be a time where you kind of see maybe what MJ Morris and Ben Finley can do?
No, I think you're playing for this year. I mean, that's what I would take here. I think Jack Chambers should get opportunities there. I mean, I was kind of joking when we first got Jack Chambers. I was like, because they were worried about Charleston Southern. We got them week 2, right? He knows the whole playbook, right? That's how it goes. So we got week 2 covered, right? But I think he'll get run. I think he'll play against his old team, hopefully in week 2, right? Barring catastrophe. He should get in against UConn, right? You would think so. I don't think Jim Moore has had time to really turn that around yet. So, no, I think you go Chambers. I mean, to me, this year is set up for this year, right? I mean, I think you got to play, because if Chambers has to come in down the road, he needs to be fully ready. Would I love to see an MJ Morris not? Yeah, it'd be great, but I just don't think that's practical or prudent right now.
I agree. All right, so with that being said, we will take a timeout right there. Again, just covered the quarterbacks and the wide receivers a good bit, and then part 2 we'll check out running backs, tight ends, offensive line. But first of all, again, Phillip, I want to kind of give it a chance. I mean, obviously, for all Cincinnati State fans who haven't checked out IPS yet, make sure to definitely go and do so. But anything specific, Phillip, that you want to kind of pitch in here?
I was going to say, Inside Pack Sports, IPS, if you haven't had a chance to come over, it's a great environment, a lot of good state fans, a lot of good discussion, whether you want to kind of talk, high-level ball and, want to talk scheme a little bit or player evaluation, or you want to talk uniforms, right? There's threads and discussions about anything and everything. It's good people. And then I will say, I will tout the Elite Plus program that James Henderson, Steve Williams, Brian Carson, all those guys have put together in this era of NIL, to be able to coalesce and bring the fan base together, to give back to the athletes. It gives great opportunities to interact with the athletes, hear what they think. I mean, it's an unprecedented level of access. And it's not much. It's a few bucks a month, but it goes a long way. I mean, there are guys who need it. I mean, we watch them on Saturdays in Carter Finley, and we love them to death. When they're between the lines there, but the other 6 days of the week, some of these guys, they need help outside of this, and they want to feel that support. And, Elite Plus is just an excellent program. Great intentions with those guys. So highly recommend that. If you're looking a way to get involved,
Absolutely. Yeah, no, it's great stuff there for sure. And again, love everything the IPS is doing, in terms of supporting with the Pack of Wolves and, the NIL and supporting these athletes for sure. Love all that, IPS is doing there. So again, hats off to you all on that. And then for us as well, obviously one of the biggest announcements that's came out for us earlier this week is obviously the announcements of our new channel memberships as well. In terms of, we have our own also too private Discord community as well. Just like you said, only a couple bucks a month. And also too, we have an opportunity as well for those who also want the private Discord community along with private exclusive Tuffy Talk content as well, and our weekly newsletter. So make sure to check that out in the link below. Hit that join button and check out which option that you want to sign up for, and then we'll look forward to having you on the private Discord with us as well. And hit that subscribe button. Also to hit that notification bell so that way you're notified whenever we release any new NC State content. And also to give us a follow, Tuffy Talk Now on Twitter and Instagram. And obviously, if you haven't already given a follow to IPS as well, make sure to do so. We'll see y'all for part 2. As always, go Pack, y'all.